to talk a little bit more about the data model, then are there, just as there are advantages to having a variety of monetization models in place, and both of you talked about that, true for data as well? I mean, should you have a variety of ways that you can interpret and ultimately turn that data into value?
Yes is the easy answer, but I'll let Saul.
Yeah, the answer is yes. The question is how. Yeah. And the question is, if you have different audience segments and you're going to look across traditional industry boundaries and really be innovative in your use of data, then you're going to have to do it in different ways. You're going to have different models and different ways to think about what to do with that data. You know, we talk about it in the media space because many of our clients don't really have direct access to the end consumer. Again, they've traditionally worked through intermediaries. So they have the problem of how do they get the data and what are they going to do with the data if they get it, and who's going to do it, because they don't really have the skill sets. So if you're in a creative agency or a creative media company or a studio in Hollywood, being a data analyst is not typically the way to success in the culture of that business. So part of our challenge when we work with companies like that, even when we talk about traditional CRM before we even get to social CRM, let alone data, is, well, who does that in this company, and where does that skill set exist? Are we going to build that skill set? Are we going to partner with that skill set? So, it's, as Clay was saying, a lot of it is about the legacy of the organization and what the organization is good at. Some of these things are not unpredictable, not unknown. We sat with the board of one of the major music companies in 1999, and we were creating scenarios of the future. One of the scenarios was all music is free. It seemed like a kind of crazy scenario to them. It came largely to reality, but they didn't want to address that scenario. They didn't want to deal with what they could have done with some of the data. They didn't want to deal with some of the other issues around how other people made money. We told them in 1997, 10%, I believe the number was, of music in the United States was pirated. 40% of computer software was pirated in 1997 in the United States. Who made more money, Microsoft or the music industry? Answer at the time was Microsoft. So, the point we were trying to make is there are different ways to monetize, and data is clearly going to be an opportunity to monetize both as a service, but beyond your own business, beyond the value chain you've traditionally participated in, because of the insights that can provide to people offering other products and services beyond what you yourself offer.
I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. In fact, I think take what Saul has said, which I think is absolutely right, and say this is a huge both threat and opportunity for the marketing and communications function in businesses generally. The 20th century had basically two models that Marcom acted on. If I'm the company and you're the audience, one model is I talk and you have to shut up, and we'll call that advertising. And the other model is you talk and I have to shut up, and we'll call that research. But there were no models where people were talking and listening in the same channel at the same time, right? The idea of conversation was essentially a way to make yourself feel better about actually you having the loudest bullhorn and nobody else having anything. The number of places where seeing what users, consumers, whatever you're going to call them, are doing, the number of places where that can create value in the company is so much larger than just the Marcom function anymore. If you'd said to somebody in the 90s, hey, you know what a really great business is going to be? Is if you create a place where all of your customers can get together and complain in public to each other about your product. That would be a great business. We ought to do that. You would have a hard time getting a second meeting for that business proposal, and yet Get Satisfaction does that every day, right? They say your customer, and what Get Satisfaction is based on, the observation that Get Satisfaction is based on, is the loss of control you fear is already in the past. The customers are going to be complaining about your product if they don't like it. The question is, do you get any value out of that complaining, yes or no? And Get Satisfaction is set up for the people who want to answer yes to that question. But get satisfaction does not fit within the traditional Marcom manages the relationship to the outside, the communications relationship to the outside world model. So one of the things I think I'd add to Saul's observations is either Marcom becomes a kind of switching yard or air traffic control for data from the outside world to say, oh, the engineers ought to hear this. This sounds like it will be useful as R&D. Or the CEO should hear this because this is about to turn into a real customer dissatisfaction issue. Or each of those departments is going to develop that capability on their own. But I can't think of a third option.
Interesting.
So I think that's really, some Marcom departments are going to say we're going to be boutique Marcom. We're going to do Marcom the best. But we're going to give up the idea that we own the interface to the outside world generally, and every other department is going to have to deal with it on their own. Or Marcom is going to say we are now going to be, essentially the Uhuru of this particular. I keep using Star Trek metaphors, but essentially we are going to route the messages, all the messages from the outside world to where they need to go. But there is no third option where Marcom just does marketing and nobody else pays attention to the outside world.
Is that URL taken at uhuru.com?
I'm sure it is.
It will be before
Howard,
this
is that
meeting,
URL?
Yeah, exactly.
Rob just asked if uhuru.com is taken. Howard will probably buy it in the next 5 minutes if it's not. So.
Sell it back to you.